Awake and unsettled babies, we all get them, but what do you do with them? Make sure you watch this video because I'm going to share lots of information on how you can get through a shoot without having to reschedule. 17 years I've been doing this for, so I have learnt a lot during this time, and still doesn't stop me from getting unsettled babies, but I just know what to do now. All right, so one of the things that I get asked regularly is, how often do I reschedule my sessions? And I actually don't. I've rescheduled one, and that would have to be, good Lord, we're going back now 14 years ago. So when it comes to working with babies, you basically just have to understand their needs and their requirements to be able to get through a session. But there's quite a few things, that I can share with you today that will help. There is no secret. There are going to be babies that will be a little bit more unsettled or awake than other babies. They are all completely different, and I think that's what we need to understand. But when we go into a session, we also have to have the right mindset. If we go into a shoot and we've got all these incredible ideas about creating big setups and getting a particular pose and being able to do all of those things, then we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves because you just don't know what that baby is going to be like on that particular day. I had a baby in the other day and it gave me a run for my money, let me tell you. It did not like me to touch its hands, to pose the hands, and I was trying to get a particular pose that we were filming for, and in the end, you know what, I just had to kind of go, doesn't like it, so I'm going to have to go with what this baby is comfortable with. And it really helped to have a spare set of hands to help sort of, gently sort of soothe the baby in terms of patting and rocking and things like that. So always remember that the way that you approach a shoot is going to impact your results. Whenever I come into my studio, I really do focus on the energy that I bring into that space. I also read the body language of my clients as well. So if they're first-time parents and you can see that they're a little tense, a little nervous, they might not seem so comfortable. I had when I see new dads, sometimes quite young new dads for the first time, watching them try to settle their baby, they don't know really what they're doing. They're just meeting this brand new baby in those first few weeks and getting to know their little personality and what they like and what they don't like. So it's that whole getting to know each other when you meet new parents with their first baby. But for me, understanding babies comes obviously from a lot of experience, but there is a lot of information that you can find on the internet. Knowing how long babies should sleep during a 24-hour period is also really important. So they will sleep up to 14 to 17 hours a day, and then usually in those first few weeks they're only waking for food. They will obviously wake to relieve themselves and probably possibly have some awake time, and a lot of babies will sleep all the time, some up to 18, 19 hours a day. But this is where you need to communicate with your clients and ask lots of questions. So when I talk about that energy that I bring into the space, babies are going to feed off my energy as much as they're going to feed off their parents' energy. So it's really important that I make those clients of mine feel comfortable in this space. I welcome them in. I have, beautiful soft music playing. It's very calming, and I try not to speak too fast. I try to be very relaxed within myself. And even if I've had a bad day, I've got 3 teenagers, so there's going to be some mornings getting those kids out the door on time is a little stressful. So if my stress levels are up and I bring that into my studio space, my clients are going to feel that. So my body language is just as important as reading their body language as well. I leave all of that outside the studio, and I make sure I take 3 deep breaths before I walk in, and I center myself and I calm myself down. And that's probably one of the most important things that I do before every single session, and the way that I greet my clients. I also make sure that I give them lots of information in terms of sort of planning before the session. I don't tell them to keep their baby awake. I don't tell them to bath or massage. I don't tell them not to eat a certain food. I don't tell them to do anything. I tell them to stick to their normal, day-to-day routine, if they have one. But we have to remember, when we think about the session that we had last Thursday with a couple and their new baby, you've got to hear firsthand from brand new parents all the emotions, the fears, the excitement, hearing their needs, their wants prior to the shoot. So we have to take all of that in and consider all of those different things. I'm having a look here. There's a couple of questions that are popping up. Garrett's got the microphone.
I do.
Interrupt me for a second.
I'll interrupt you now. Okay. Saram says, I once had a long session for 5.5 hours. Baby was cluster feeding, pooping back to back, was not sleeping, and there was long feeding breaks of an hour. What would you do in that sort of situation?
So if the baby is pooping back to back, obviously it's having some form of reaction to possibly something mum's had to eat, things like that. I have had those situations as well. This is where you just need to take on board every baby as they come and be baby-led and go with what they're comfortable with. If a baby is constantly pooping, I keep that nappy on, the diaper on at all times. And if they're cluster feeding, maybe they're not getting that nice long feed that they need. This is where that pre-planning is really important. For your clients in terms of giving them all the information that you need, but also the way that, you plan your session out. So I have a set routine before every single shoot. When my clients arrive, I say, come on in, it's nice and warm in here. I then, welcome them into the space, tell them to have a seat. I ask them when their baby was last fed. And if they say it was an hour ago, I'll say breast or bottle. And I say breast or bottle all the time. Because I need to know if it is breastfed, because they feed more frequently, because it digests faster. If it's a formula fed baby, then I know that I'm going to get anywhere from sort of, 2.5 to 4 hours between feeds, depending on the baby and how much formula they're actually giving them. So knowing what they feed and how often they feed in terms of, cluster feeding and things like that. I need to know all of that information, because once that baby's fed and it goes to sleep, I know then I've got an hour and a half with a breastfed baby I should get an hour and a half of posing time to get everything that I need with that baby. And then if it's a formula fed baby, I know I'm going to get a little bit longer. So when they come in and they say that, I always say, was it a big feed or just a short, quick feed for their last feed? And they'll say, then they'll think about it, usually very sleep deprived and tired, and they'll try to remember, it might have been sort of 10, 15 minutes. I'll go, okay, well, how about we undress your baby, maybe give them a clean diaper if they need. I'll give them a nice blanket to wrap their baby in, and then I tell them to sit, relax, feed their baby. We'll start when they're ready, and I'll sort of then have a little bit of a conversation around how the session's going to go. But once they start feeding their baby, I also leave the room. Because if you've got a brand new mum that is breastfeeding for the very, very first time, those first couple of weeks, it can be quite painful for a new mum breastfeeding. They can get very sore, cracked nipples, and for them to sit back and relax and be able to have a full letdown to feed their baby properly can be, sort of hit and miss sometimes. So that's why I allow them the space to sit and relax, because if I'm in here, some people like to be very private when they're feeding, and I'm often meeting these people for the very first time. So if you allow them to sit and take in the environment, they will tend to relax. But if you continually talk to them whilst they're feeding, their energy and attention is focused on you and not their baby. So it's really important that you do allow them that space to feed and take that time. So I purposely leave my camera outside the studio, and I say, I'm going to go grab my camera, and wash my hands, can I get you some water? And that's my excuse to leave. I don't say, okay, you feed, I'm going to leave so that you can feed. That's not how I go about that. I make sure that, everything that I do is about providing that service for them and letting them know exactly what it is that I'm doing. I give them about 5 minutes. I might check an email. I might go and do something else. I'm not sure anything, but I give them about 5 to 10 minutes before I come back in. And it's actually really incredible to see the difference in terms of the energy in the space once you see them really relax like that. So then when that baby is feeding, they're feeling that energy. Even if they're bottle fed, they're going to feel the way that they're being held, and that energy will transfer into them. So if you've got a very anxious, nervous, uptight parent, then your baby will react like that. The little baby I had the other day, it was wide awake after a feed and a little unsettled, and it was being sort of rocked quite intensely. So for me, that's my cue to go, let me just grab a blanket, I'm going to come and take your baby, and then I take them because I want them to calm down. But if you do have a mum trying to settle a baby and the baby is constantly looking for more food, and you know that baby's had a big feed, then you can take the baby as well, because I know when I take the baby, I've got nothing that the baby needs, so it's not going to look for food on me. But a lot of babies will constantly want to suck, to soothe, and to help settle. So I ask them if they have a pacifier or a dummy. I don't tell them to bring one. That's up to the parent. If there is a baby that is constantly wanting to suck, to settle, then I just wrap them and I put their hands down, because the minute the hands come up by the face, they've got no control over their body actions, so they might just think that something touching the side of their face is potentially food, which we all know they love. But yeah, in that situation, when you're going for 5.5 hours, that is a very, very long time for parents and a baby to be in a studio space. So I've got a list of things here that I am going to cover off when it comes to reasons why babies are unsettled and why babies are awake and things like that. So because I know that it's going to answer a few of these questions. When you are in a hot studio like that, and your parents are very, very tired, it can be very draining on them. And you don't want your parents sort of sitting there going, how long is this going to take? And they might have somewhere else that they need to be. So try to keep those sessions, to a shorter time frame, even if they're awake. If you can swaddle that baby, get awake photos. Parents love to see all those beautiful expressions. And, when I capture a baby that's awake, guaranteed that is the big print every time. They love it. Might not necessarily be what I had in mind that I was going to capture, but remember, those photos aren't for us. Those photos are for the parents. We're capturing their baby in those first couple of weeks, and they just want to remember how small they are. So it doesn't have to be about getting that perfect shot. It's about photographing that baby and all of their beautiful little features. So yeah, when we start to, I've gone through my little sort of sleep cycle thing, understanding actually sleep cycle in terms of how often babies will stay asleep. And when they go into a deep sleep, often you'll find that babies that aren't in a deep sleep will still sort of have some fussing, some moving, whilst they are trying to go off into that deep sleep. So, getting some photos of babies, trying to pose them in probably more advanced ways of posing babies whilst they're not in a deep sleep can often result in them reacting, moving, being fidgety, fussy, things like that. But yeah, the different reasons why babies are unsettled, there's a number of them. And when babies are trying to let us know what's wrong with them, that's when they cry, that's when they make noise, that's when they have different bodily movements like clenched fists or jerking arms and legs, trying to move and do that sort of sit-up motion, can possibly mean that they've got wind, belly pain, things like that. But you just don't know really what is causing a baby to be extremely unsettled. So that's where you've got to go back to the drawing board and go, right, are they hungry? How long has it been between feeds? Because when I look at, the time throughout a session, I can look and see that baby hasn't been fed for an hour and a half. And if it's starting to move its mouth, if it's starting to react to what I'm doing, there's no point in trying to push through and continue to upset that baby. I just give it back to the parent, because I can then move on and set something else up. I can give them some more time. I can go and get myself a drink. I can come back. So it's making good use of your time so that you don't end up having those really long sessions. When you are working with a baby that has like wind and things like that after a feed, this is where that communication comes in at the beginning of the session. When you're talking about the feeding, does your baby often get wind? Do you find that they prefer to be upright after a feed? Things like that. Ask them. They know that baby better than anyone else. So even me, having done this for 17 years, I still ask the exact same questions because I need to get to know that baby as quickly as I possibly can. I also find that when I take the baby for the first time, I will sit them in my lap. I will often lay them sort of, upright like this with their head, and I'll just watch the way that they react to my touch, because some babies are more sensitive than others. If I've got a baby that is wide awake and it's happy, it's just looking around, I go straight onto the posing bag. I put a little wrap around the arms so that they're not fidgeting and moving, and I get some beautiful awake shots. Babies obviously can't focus on objects. So what I do is I come in quite close and I'll fill the space in front of them with either, my face or my camera. And then what you'll find is that they'll be attracted in terms of that, like the direction that they're looking to, high contrasting objects like dark or bright things. So putting a dark camera in front of their face, they'll often follow it. So that's why I do that, so that I can get that eye contact, because it can be a little tricky to get that eye contact. But if you can get a series of different expressions, if the baby's just been fed, then you're going to get some really great photos there for the parents. Michelle's also just popped in a link I can see in the comments there for the Understanding Newborn Behaviour blog post. There's a couple of other blog posts I'll mention shortly that are going to be really beneficial to you as well. So, but if that baby is awake and unsettled, the first thing I do is wrap those arms in, and then I continue to wrap that baby, because I know that once I make that baby secure and comfortable, it is going to settle. And this is what we have to remember. The babies are, they're like aliens, I suppose, on a new planet, really, when you think about it. The environment that they come from, there's no better way to explain it. The environment that they come from, in those last few weeks of pregnancy, there's not a lot of space there. They do a lot of that sort of fattening up, that growing just before birth. And they're running out of room in there. They're very confined. It's soft, it's warm, it's full of beautiful movement, and it's noisy. So they're all the things that babies are used to. They are not used to being held. When you overhandle a baby, when a baby is constantly passed around, picked up, put down, moved from prop to posing bag, it's going to become unsettled, and its little body is going to become quite sore. So you've got to remember that overstimulating a baby as well is going to make them very, very unsettled. But knowing that when they're born, they're breathing air into their lungs for the first time, they're feeding for the first time, they're using their bowels for the first time. Everything is a first for them. So what we have to remember is to try and simulate what they're familiar with as much as we possibly can throughout a session. And that's why having a transitional workflow is going to really help you when you are moving that baby from one pose to the next. That's why, creating a beautiful, calm, warm environment that a baby, can relax and enjoy is going to benefit you. I did see a comment. Can you just scroll up, please, Garrett? And there was one there, someone asked a question about a baby. Keep going. It might be further down. I'll let you find it. Yeah. Oh no, keep going down maybe. Yeah, it might have been breached. Where is that one? Can you find that one?
Do breech babies like families close to
So, yeah.
Okay. So, obviously, babies can be born with, lots of different ailments, hip dysplasia, with breech babies, things like that. If you see a baby that's naturally just drawing its legs up, then they're not going to have their legs, they're not going to be, enjoying having their legs posed out behind them. So this is where being baby-led, if you've got a nice, calm, relaxed, sleeping baby, but they naturally draw their feet up, bum up pose, probably not going to be the best, most comfortable position for that baby. So I always look at the baby and see how they naturally lie. That's why I take them in my lap at the beginning of the session, and I just sort of, fold their little arms across their body. I touch their feet. I see the way that their feet like to lie, and I will go with what they're comfortable with. And I always start on my posing bag. So if I just rewind, when I've left the room to allow the parents to feed at the beginning of the session, when I come back into the studio, that's when I'll sit and talk to them about what to expect. Even though they get a what to expect beforehand, they still don't know what exactly is going to happen during that shoot. So I'll say to them, I'm going to start on my posing bag. I'm going to go through a series of 3 to 4 poses, and then I'm going to move on to a couple of props that I'll get you to help me choose, and then I'm going to take some beautiful photos of you and your baby. I say that every session. So regardless of whether the baby is awake and naked and being posed, asleep and naked and being posed on the posing bag, or awake and wrapped, I'm still going to use the posing bag. I just don't say what poses I'm going to get. But I also ask them, prior to doing all of that, is there anything that you would like to get out of today's session? Even though we've communicated beforehand, they may have seen something the day before, 2 days before the shoot. You don't know that. So you can communicate, with them a lot beforehand, but until they come into your space and they see all of your beautiful props and things like that, or photos on the wall, they might have changed their mind. They might be attracted to something else.
That kind of answers Karen's question. So she's asked, do you have them fill out a form with questions on it before the session? And that's obviously
I don't do forms because I like to have a conversation. I like to get to know my clients. So via email, I'll try to call them. I'll send them an email and I'll say, would love to have a chat, talk a little bit about the session, answer any questions that you might have. When's a good time to call? Because I don't know if they're still working leading up to the delivery of their baby. I don't know if they've got other children at home. They might prefer to give me a call when they're available, and I'll give them a time frame. So it is really important that I get as much information as possible. But if you love a form, go for it. Get them to fill in what sort of colours and decor do they have in their home, things like that. But let's go back to unsettled babies. So when you've got a baby that's crying, like I've said, it is communicating with you. It's telling you that something's wrong. It's telling you that it's hungry. It's telling you that it's in pain. It might have wind. It might be overstimulated. It might be overtired. And that's why, it's really important to understand why you shouldn't tell a parent to keep their baby awake before a shoot, because sleep promotes sleep. That's not just coming from a photographer, that's coming from, doing my research. It's speaking to doctors, it's speaking to pediatricians, which I've done in the past, and I've reached out to lots of them. And my daughter's pediatrician delivers babies, and that's her thing. So I make sure that I ask all of the right questions to get the information I need to be able to do my job. And that's our responsibility. Like, I'm not just a baby photographer because I take baby pictures. I've invested time into understanding babies so that I can take their picture. So if you want to be a baby photographer, if you're just starting out, do your research, understand them, know what you're getting yourself into, because babies aren't for everyone, and that's okay. You've got to have a lot of patience, and you've got to love babies. Like Garrett's putting his hand up back there. He doesn't love babies. Sometimes he goes, that's a cute one. But, he'd prefer not to be working with babies. But that's okay. I keep him around.
All right. We have fun instead.
So how do you handle babies who hate to be swaddled? They don't hate to be swaddled. You just have to understand, I suppose, how babies like to be supported and how you can best support them. So I know a lot of babies like to have their hands up. If you are trying to swaddle a baby with its hands down by its side, that's not natural. In the womb, they're in that fetal position and their hands are up by their face all the time. Their elbows are bent. Their arms are never straight, and unless they're sort of stretching or pushing out. But remember, they have no control over those arms. To find that comfortable place, you get the arms up onto the chest, and you can cross their little hands over. You can have their hands down lower if they're not settling and you want to get those hands tucked in. But don't try to straighten those arms and put them into a straight jacket, because it's not going to be comfortable and they won't settle. But if a baby is not settling while it's swaddled, it's probably telling you that something is trying to tell you that something else is wrong. It's either hungry, it has pain, it has wind, it has colic, it's overstimulated, it's overtired. So when I've got a baby that's crying, I just gently wrap them. I get those arms in first, and then I bring the legs up. And between each wrap, I might just give it a little gentle rock and then lay it down and then go around again with the wrap. But my job is to try and make that baby feel as secure and comfortable as possible. So I wrap them in a position that they're quite familiar with, tucking the little legs up, keeping those arms bent. I also make sure that when I am wrapping a baby, that they're not going to overheat, which can be very dangerous for babies. Parents are told when they take that baby home, put them on their back to sleep. Don't have anything that could cover their face in their cot. Make sure that they're at a comfortable temperature and they're nice and secure. So when you do wrap a baby and you put multiple wraps around that baby, make sure you turn that temperature down in the studio. I usually have mine set to around 24, 25 degrees Celsius. Google what that is in Fahrenheit. And obviously when they're naked and they can't control their body temperature, they will cry and fuss if they're not warm enough as well. So try to sort of gauge, all the different things that could be upsetting that baby. But I guarantee you that baby's it's not that it doesn't like to be swaddled. It just needs to be swaddled in a position that it's comfortable in and familiar with, and is quite natural.
Macy Carr's got a question about breastfeeding mums. Do you ever have them step out of the room so the baby can't smell them? I find that if the mum's too close and on edge, it can often, if they're feeding frequently and that sort of thing.
If a baby is feeding frequently, it's because it's hungry. So you've got to allow that time for it to have a really big feed. And that's where I say to them, we need that beautiful baby to have a nice full tummy. So I want you to relax, take as long as you need, so that we get a nice big feed in before we start. And that'll allow me to get you out of here as quickly as possible. So when a baby is constantly feeding, they cluster feed because they're hungry. Sometimes mum's not having that letdown like I was talking about, with that hind milk that is more, it's fattier. It's going to keep them fuller for longer. If they're cluster feeding, they're usually just getting that what's it called? The milk in the, Tracy will know.
Colostrum?
Yeah, the fore milk. There's another name for it. God, I've lost it. Before they get the hind milk. So when a baby's cluster feeding, it's not going to get that hind milk. It's going to get the milk that's sitting in front of it, which is watery, and it's not going to keep them full. So that's why it's really important for them to get that hind milk to have that long feed. And if a baby's falling asleep, if I can see that baby sleeping on the breast and it's not feeding, I always say to the parent, just give them a little rub on the thigh there, give them a little rub on the back. That'll stimulate them again, and to get them going, to get them feeding. And it's just very gentle, little rub like that on the back, or bring them off, give them a bit of a wind, wake them up a little bit, and then go again. So try to sort of communicate as much as you can about that feeding process. But I don't ask them to leave the room. Parents really want to be a part of the process. They love it. I mean, I've got my couch. It's all the way down the other end of this room when parents come in here, and we actually end up bringing chairs up nice and close so they can watch, because they just want to see. They want to see their baby. They're not watching you, unless, of course, they have reason to watch you. If they're, I'm not speaking to anyone in particular here, but they're watching their baby and how their baby reacts, because they're still getting to know them. But yeah, I just sort of say to them, you know, they can smell you, and have a bit of a laugh and a joke. But yeah, I just feel that the more I focus my attention on the baby, the more the baby, you know, often relaxes, and I get my parents to relax.
So on the topic of parents, Sherry says here, my last two, the mum kept next to me trying to help. How would you kind of tell someone nicely that they're not really welcome? Because, you know getting in the way and that sort of thing, it's
absolutely
in your space.
I actually remember, you know, when I was sort of starting out with newborn photography, a lot of parents, I felt like they were literally sitting on my shoulder. And it was a bit unnerving because my energy was focused there instead of in front of me. I was so worried about them, but I wasn't taking control of the situation either. And then I started to get the confidence within myself to realize that they're coming into my space. They're paying me to do my job. So if I went into a hairdressing salon and I didn't feel that the hairdresser was confident enough or knew what they were doing, if the body language or, you know, the way that they spoke and communicated to me didn't give me that confidence, I would be feeling really quite sort of, do they need my help? Like, do I have to guide them? Do I have to tell them? Like, that's how someone that doesn't have confidence in what they're doing, and the way that they can communicate with you will make someone else feel. So I own my space. When I take those 3 deep breaths and I, you know, try to focus on the energy that I bring into my studio, I own this space. I remind myself every day of why I love what I do and that I know what I'm doing. And I'm good at what I do because I know what I'm doing and I love it. So when they arrive, it's really important for me to take control of any situation. If I sense that they're uptight, nervous, stressed, I just will make them feel more comfortable. So it's all about giving them the information that they need. When someone's, you know, trying to help, they might just feel that you need the help. I say to them, have a seat, relax. This is your time to sit back and enjoy the session. But yeah, if a parent came up beside me now, and I have had a couple of grandmothers come in and do that, I'll say, you know, go and have a seat, sit back, relax, enjoy. You know, I'll let you know if I need a hand. Those are the words that you need to say. I'll let you know if I need a hand. You take control of that situation.
Camelia's got a good question about, you know, are babies more unsettled or fussy in the afternoon hours? Like, what is the best time to photograph a baby?
I do all of my sessions in the morning. It is the best time for me. Most babies towards the end of the day do have those bouts of being unsettled and fussy. They call it the witching hour. But it's often because, you know, a lot has sort of happened throughout the day. They might be overtired, overstimulated. Remember when I said babies aren't used to being held? And we all know when you have a new baby, people like to visit. Obviously, COVID's prevented that. But most of the time, if you're going out and about with your new baby and you might have a midwife appointment, you might need to go to the supermarket, you're getting the baby in and out of the car, you're putting the baby in a pram. When they come to the studio, I book my sessions in the morning, yes, knowing in the back of my mind that the afternoon is that witching hour, but I also don't want them going to doctor's appointments before the shoot. I don't want them getting that baby in and out of the car multiple times and overhandling them, because then they're not having that sleep that they need. So I want that to be the first thing that they do that day, come to my studio. So that baby is nice and relaxed and is calm. Because yeah, if they are constantly, it's the formilk. Yeah, well, it makes sense. Thanks, Danielle. Thanks, Olivia. I knew I had it there. But yes, it is really important when you schedule that session that it suits your working hours. I have very set working hours. I go home at you know, well, I go home at 3 o'clock, but that's to pick up my kids from school. But you know, my working hours are 9 to 5. So I book my sessions in for 10 a.m. So structure your working day around, you know, obviously your schedule, and then get your parents in, you know, at a time that obviously suits them and you.
As far as dads go, dads are usually very different to mums. What techniques do you use to actually relax dads? Like get rid of their tension
And dads often are the ones that, really don't know much about what's about to happen. They've probably just been told that there's a photo shoot and they weren't a part of choosing, not all dads are a part of choosing the photographer, but they probably are sitting there thinking, how much is this going to cost me? And I often have had dads like that. And I've had dads, I used to play white noise and, those shushing things, that constant repetitive sound. And they used to say, I don't think the baby likes that. I don't think the baby likes that noise. And it's like, well, no, you don't know what the baby likes and doesn't like just yet because it's 10 days old. I'm guessing you don't like that noise. I don't say that, but
imply it.
I'll say, well, let's put some nice soft music on. That's what I used to do. And that's actually what led me to start playing relaxation music throughout my studio. I don't play white noise anymore because it was unsettling for the dads. And when I'm adjusting the temperature in the room, I make sure that I let them know all the time that it's warm, because I don't want them to go, oh, it's hot in here. But I have a trick for that too. When they do get a little hot, sorry about that with the microphone. When I say, come on in, it's nice and warm in here, the studio isn't at the temperature that I need it to be to work with the baby. Purely because, yes, it can be quite uncomfortable to walk into a room that's 28 degrees with heaters blaring. But also when a mum sits down to feed her baby, and if they're breastfeeding and you've got that skin to skin contact and they're sitting in 28 degrees, they're generating and transferring heat between the two of them. So you don't want that baby to become too lethargic and overheat while it's feeding, because it's definitely going to go to sleep. It's not going to have that nice deep feed that you need it to have. But it's a comfortable temperature at around that 26 degrees Celsius. So it's easy for me to bump up that temperature when I'm ready to start photographing the baby, and it's also easy for me to cool the room down if I have to wrap that baby to start with, if they are unsettled or wide awake. So always have that temperature at a nice, comfortable heat for the parents. But with dads, I just talk to them. If I sense that they don't want to be here, I just say, you probably haven't had a lot of sleep in the last couple of days. I won't hold it against you if you fall asleep on the couch. You can have light banter with the parents, but try to get the dads involved as well, because often a new dad hasn't had a lot to do with the brand new baby. Because when the baby is born, it comes out, it needs mum to survive for food. And so if a mum is breastfeeding and if she feels like she's constantly feeding that baby, the dads, they just want to be a part of the process. They want to help with the cuddling. And if I need a supportive hand or something like that, I'll get the dad involved, because he just wants something to do. Sitting back and, twiddling his thumbs, he's going to get bored. And if you're not interacting or communicating with him.
I've got a question here from Enrique, and I suppose it's a really good one for people starting out in newborn photography and that sort of thing. But understanding that things do happen, what's the average or correct time to spend on a newborn session? What's too long? What's too short?
So I always tell my clients to allow 2 to 4 hours. And that's because I don't want them to book in something straight after, so that they have to rush off, just in case I need to allow a little bit of extra time for feeding and cuddling. And that's the thing, at the beginning of that session, when I'm talking to them about what to expect throughout the next couple of hours, I always say to them, when it comes to the feeding, sit back, relax, take your time, and I'm going to work completely around your baby. If they need to have a top up, if they need an extra cuddle or anything like that, we'll go with the flow and what they're happy and comfortable with. When I make the session and the whole experience about the baby, and I keep my focus and attention on their comfort and safety, and I voice that to the parents, I make them feel more at ease. So when I say to them 2 to 4 hours, my sessions, and you can't compare if you're just starting out your sessions to my sessions, because it's it's going to be very different. When I'm teaching a tutorial, you'll notice when you watch all of my newborn posing tutorials, I'll take my time to go through every step of every pose. But when I'm working and I'm not teaching and it's just me and that baby, I'm in, get the shot, move on, because I want to get as much as I possibly can whilst that baby is nice and sleepy, so that I can get my clients out of here as quickly as possible, because a hot studio when you are overtired and, you know, I mean, sometimes we have parents that don't leave. That can be hard too. They just stay, and it's like, oh, I've got other things to do. But yeah, it depends on the baby, but you need to obviously, you know, create that session workflow and get your clients in and out as quickly as possible whilst allowing enough time for feeding and cuddling.
I've got a question here from Anita. So you talked before about, you know, setting the temperature of the room and making sure that, you know, you're creating the right environment. What advice have you got for people who travel to clients' homes when dealing with that sort of thing?
Yeah.
How do you...
So I went to client homes, get it out, Kelly, for 4 years, and I used to take obviously everything that I needed. I would communicate with my clients beforehand. I would always ask them as well to send me a photo of the area that I could set up my equipment. So I would tell them that I just need a space. Back then I was all natural light. That can be really scary going to some people's homes, especially when they've got lovely stained glass windows. So I would say, you know, I just need a small area to be able to set up my posing bag, a backdrop stand, and near a window. You might say near a, you know, enough space to have a light stand, things like that. The other thing I would do is ask them to send me a photo of that space. Now that's going to give me a really good indication as well in terms of their decor. I create photographs that are going to hang on their wall. So I want to know what sort of colors, tones, textures, what style of home do they have? And I'll try to create something for that. I also ask, you know, in terms of colors, is there anything that they've seen on my Facebook page, my Instagram page that they like, and go through that. Sort of Q&A type of thing with them beforehand. And when I arrived at client homes, I would say to them, you know, I'm going to set up, it's probably going to take me about 5 to 10 minutes, and if I can get you to undress your baby, leave their diaper on, pop a blanket around them and give them a nice big feed. And I always did that while I was there, because then that told me how much they'd been fed. It gave me a good indication of how, you know, how full they really were. Because what I found often before arriving at client homes was that they would put that baby down to sleep, and they would feed it, put it down to sleep, and then they'd run around getting themselves ready, cleaning their house. And so by the time I got there, the baby would be so sleepy because it had been put down to sleep. But the minute I'd pick it up, it'd wake up because it was time to feed. So then we'd go through that process. So I never tell them obviously to do anything prior to a shoot, but I learnt very quickly that babies were always hungry before a session because they'd been put down while mum got ready and cleaned her home. So then I would, while I was setting up, you know, find somewhere comfortable to sit down. Often they'd sit in the same room as me, but I would find that they would go out elsewhere. And I had a little speaker, so just putting some music on in the room. Back then I had my little boombox with a heartbeat that would play. I got it out of a teddy bear, and it was just like that constant sort of heartbeat sound, and I would play that next to the baby. But yeah, someone actually asked up there before about the music. When I say relaxing music, think about when you go into like a day spa, think about going into somewhere to have a beautiful relaxing massage. That's the type of music I play. So find the music that helps you relax. And baby lullabies, that'd do my head in. Music for yoga, absolutely. Classical music, no, it's not really my jam. Once a family, when I went to their home, they put on like AC/DC heavy metal lullabies. It was hilarious. But I asked them to turn it off after the first way through, because it was a bit much after a while. But yeah, I like it just to be background noise, so it's nice and soothing and relaxing. because I always found that whenever I went into one of those day spas, I would just relax instantly. And so I want my parents to feel like that. But listen, I've been going now for 45 minutes. I really didn't know that there was that much time. There's 3 blog posts. Michelle's been sharing lots of stuff there for you in the comments. So perfect environment, huge for keeping babies nice and calm and settled. Create the perfect environment. Have a look at that blog post, the newborn studio, creating the perfect environment. There's another blog post called How to Become a Baby Whisperer, and then the Understanding Newborn Behavior. All 3 of those blog posts are going to give you lots of information. There's also heaps of videos that I've done before and repeating myself today, but obviously I can't say this stuff enough. You've got to find your groove. When it comes to your clients and their needs, you've got to find your groove and what works for you. I found mine a long time ago. I found what worked, but it was when I owned what I do. You know, I took a full ownership of the fact that I work with newborn babies, and I just had to work out, how can I do my job? How can I provide the clients that are paying me a lot of money with what it is that they're expecting? So I went back to the drawing board, because I was hit and miss. I'd be like, oh, I've had 4 unsettled babies in a row. Oh, I've got a sleepy baby. They're all different. You're never going to know what you get. You just have to take every baby as it comes and do the best that you can. But always remember, when we talked about safety last week, it's not about getting the shot. It's about capturing someone's baby and keeping them comfortable, because no one wants to hear their baby cry. They want to remember this experience, and you know, it's all about everything that you can do to put into it. But yeah, I'm reading some of your beautiful comments. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. I can tell you, I've been a little quiet in the group lately because we've been super busy here. We've got a lot of things happening behind the scenes that we'll be able to share with you very soon in terms of newbornposing.com. I've been shooting again this past week. And last week. It's been really great to have babies back in the studio after a couple of months off. Last year, obviously, I had some personal things happening, and it's been a challenge, obviously, to find my groove again. Like I said, you know, everyone's got to find their groove, and I feel that I'm coming back into that now and readjusting to life as I know it at the moment. So yeah, I really, really appreciate all of your support here in this amazing community as it grows bigger and bigger every day. All right. I am going to wrap up here. Are we off? We on? We're still there? Okay, Garrett's thought we had a little problem there, but I am going to go. It's Thursday afternoon or Thursday morning here in Australia. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your week wherever you are. Thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you again next Thursday. Keep an eye out for tomorrow's email. I've got something very cool I'm going to share, and on Tuesday we'll share what next week's topic will be. But if you've got any ideas or topics that you'd like me to cover, write a post, tag me in it in the group, and yeah, please don't private message me on Facebook with an idea or a question. Tag me in a comment on a post in the group, because I'm not using Messenger at the moment. I've got over 300 unanswered messages in there that I just cannot keep up with, on top of my emails and everything else. So make sure you either email support@newbornposing.com or tag me in a post. And yeah, if I missed the temperature part when you spoke on going to others' homes, do you suggest bringing a portable heater? I used to always take a portable heater with me. That was the last question. But yeah, I do ask them if they have reverse cycle air conditioning or a heating system. And if you live in a very cold part of the world, make sure you talk to them about that heat, because it is very important to control that temperature throughout a shoot. On that note, I'm going to go. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week. Stay safe. Bye.